Okay, recording is on. Well, good morning, my fellow Toastmasters of District 117. Welcome to this second session of Running Toastmasters Contests brought to you by District 117. My name is Bernie Estevez, and I am your District Coach Chair. We had a session on Running Toastmasters Contest just a few days ago where we talked about the fundamentals or all of the basics for running a successful and fair contest. This session is going to be a little bit different, where I'm going to discuss mainly all of the best practices specifically for running online contests. So that's the main focus of this meeting is going to be about, just talking about the best practices. And with that, we are going to get started. Unless, Rich, do you have anything to say before we get started?
No, I would just welcome everyone as well, and welcome the visitors. I know we have at least one from another district, so I hope you find the information Bernie provides to be helpful and useful.
Very nice. Thank you, Rich. All right, let's get started. First thing that we're going to talk about when it comes to online speech contest best practices is the preparation and the technology that we're going to use. You have to first determine what is the medium that you're going to use, and then whatever technology you decide on, make sure that you provide guidance to everyone that's attending the contest. You want to make sure that everyone is familiar with the platform ahead of time. A lot of us these days are using Zoom, and most people are already familiar with Zoom, but even then, you want to make sure that you hold some kind of pre-contest meetings ahead of time, just so that people get familiar with it. So that's the first bullet item there. Meeting moderator. This will be the person that's responsible for handling all the technology. It could be the sergeant at arms, or it could be somebody else entirely. Today, actually, my meeting moderator is Susan Marshall, who volunteered to be my co-host, and making sure people are, if they don't mute themselves and they're making noise, then she will make sure that they are muted. And then Susan will also help me monitor the chat. So it's important that you have somebody, one or more people as moderator, to help you out with your meeting or your contest. Breakout rooms. Now, if you use breakout rooms during your contest, especially for the ballot counting or the protest, you want to make sure that the platform keeps the communications in the breakout rooms. Especially with the protest, you don't want to let other people know what's going on until you're ready to inform that. Chat function. If you choose to leave the chat function on during the contest, you want to make sure that you designate a team member to moderate that chat, just like I have Susan here today. In contests, you want to be careful about this. I've actually seen it where chats are not enabled in contests, and the reason being is because what you don't want is for the audience to be making comments on the contestants after they're done speaking. I've actually seen this happen, and it's not appropriate, because that will, if any of the judges are looking at that chat, it will influence them. It could influence them when they go to the judges. So just use your best judgment there as whether or not you want to have the chat on, but for contests, I actually recommend that you don't have it on and only allow the officials to be able to communicate with themselves. TI recommends that you have that you don't have an external voting system. This is something that they strongly discourage. They basically say that you want to keep as close to the standard contest procedures as possible. So use the ballot sheet that they provide. Don't use some other like online voting system instead of the form. Just because we are online, we are still judging the same way. So keep those forms there. So don't use any other external systems for voting. That's something that they strongly recommend that you do not do. As far as the minute of silence is concerned, you want to decide ahead of time if you want to display anything while the minute of silence is there. You could choose to have some kind of image or with a countdown. There's a few web pages that you can actually go and do like a countdown, so that people in the audience can see how much time is remaining. Up to you if you want to do that, but that's something that if you are going to do that, make sure you do that ahead of time. When we did the contest in the district, we didn't have anything there to show. And we just basically had the timer just give us a verbal signal as to when that minute of silence has passed. But that is something that you need to decide ahead of time. The drawing for speaking order, you need to determine a way to draw for speaking order that promotes fairness, and that this is important. Again, because we are doing this online, you cannot just have a little basket with numbers and have people come in and pull the number that they want. You actually could do that, and I've actually done that in one of the contests that I was the contest master. But what I did was I had the bucket here with the numbers, and then I will say, okay, Johnny, I'm going to pick your number. So I will dip into the bucket and pull up the number for them, or for Johnny. Then we'll say, okay, now you are number 5, and then so on. So you could do that. I've also seen it where people use a computer program where it randomizes numbers automatically, and then it matches it to people. And then you give them what the number is. I'm not a big fan of that because the contestants are not seeing that actually being done. Where if they're seeing me put my hand in the bucket, it's kind of obvious that it's a random there. But you choose whatever way you want to do that. As far as contest forms are concerned, you want to make sure that you send all necessary forms to the contestants and the contest officials in advance. One of those is the judges eligibility form, the code of ethics. And then the other one is a speaker certification of eligibility and originality. And the reason why you want to send specifically those 2 forms ahead of time is because one of the things that as a contest organizer you need to do, this is very important, is that you want to make sure that people are eligible to compete. And TI actually has a really nice tool on their website. It's called the Speech Contest Eligibility Checker, where you can go in there and you can enter the person's Toastmasters ID number and their name, and then you hit search, and then it'll tell you, what club they belong to, whether they are a paid member, and then a few other things. So that is actually a must do when you receive all of those forms back from the contestants and also from the judges. Because remember, to be a judge, you have to be a paid member, and if it's anything outside of the club, you have to have been in TI for at least 6 months. Otherwise, you cannot be a judge. And also, there's the educational requirement that you have to be a judge. So this is a really cool tool. The website for that is actually pretty simple. You go to toastmasters.org/speech contest eligibility checker, and then you just put dashes in between all those words, and then there's your tool right there. Pretty cool tool to use. This goes without saying, but make sure that all your guests and contestants arrive early. It is recommended that all of them, including the audience members, arrive early to make sure that they set up, and that if they have to do any kind of testing with their equipment, that they have enough time to do that. You want to ensure that judges are aware of their webcams that may need to remain off. The judges' webcams cannot be on during the contest, and this is in order to maintain anonymity. And I'll also add that they shouldn't have their picture of themselves in their profile either, because just because you have your video turned off, sometimes if you have a picture with your profile instead of the video, then you will see a static picture there. And if that's there for a judge, then obviously, you're going to know who it is. So you want to make sure that you don't have any picture in there. Actually, if you see right now, my backup device, I named it Bernie too, but if I take that name out, it'll just be completely blank. So you wouldn't know who it is. So you want to do something like that. Okay, one more thing about the judge is that you have to agree beforehand what is the naming convention that you want to use for the judges. I've seen it where you could just write, actually, I don't think you actually even want to do that. but you do need to come up with a naming convention, because I don't think Zoom will let you put a blank name. You have to have something like a dot or something. So you just have to agree, what do you want to put in there? I think you can actually put the word judge, but I wouldn't even go as far as that, because if you have the chat enabled, then other contestants can be aiming the judge, and you want to avoid any kind of communication there. But no, that really is up to you how you want to do that. As far as attendance is concerned, before the contest begins, you want to ensure that all contestants and judges are present. That's important there. So, and you're going to do that as part of the briefing. You're going to check who's there or not. Now, speaking about the backup devices that I just mentioned, for all contest officials and contestants, if possible, okay, TI recommends that they have a primary and a backup device, because you never know with technology what could go wrong. So that's something that TI actually recommends, that you have 2 of those. And we did that in the last contest that we did for the spring. We actually had contestants have a backup device. I think all of them actually had a backup device, and that worked out pretty good. We didn't have to use them, but they were there if we needed to use them. And just remember that you're going to be on camera. Everyone's going to be on camera. So any contestants or contest officials, except for judges, of course, may be shown on camera during the contest. You want to keep this in mind when selecting your attire and the camera location. Also make sure that your camera is fixed, as to avoid any kind of movement. It is kind of distracting if you don't have a fixed camera. I've seen it in regular Toastmasters meeting where people are actually walking while on the meeting, so you see all the movement in the back, and sometimes that is a little bit distracting. So you want to make sure that, especially for contestants and officials, that your cameras are fixed and not moving around. Any questions on any of these items here? By the way, feel free to interrupt me at any time. I want to make this as interactive as possible, so definitely feel free to jump in if you have any comments, any questions, or if you want to correct me on anything that I think that I say that you think I may say wrong. Anything before I move on to the next one? Okay, very good. Let's move on. Okay, now let's talk about the communication. One thing that I want to keep you informed is that the online contest will actually last a little longer than the in-person contest. So that is something you want to keep in mind. And the reason is because, Murphy law with technology, what will go wrong, what can go wrong will go wrong. Plus, because we're now dealing with, remote things, they won't happen as fast as if you are in person. For example, the counting of the ballots, the collecting of the ballots, and judges now have to sign, scan, or take a picture, then email it to the ballot counters, and they have to get in a breakout room with the judge. So all those things will take time. So because of all those things, just know that the duration of the online contest will actually be a little bit longer. So just plan for that when you're, figuring out the beginning and the end times for your contest. Toastmasters actually recommend that you use some kind of external instant messaging service. One of the ones that I've seen used a lot is WhatsApp. And you can choose to use that, or you can choose some other one. I actually helped with a couple of contests in the spring in Europe, and there we were using WhatsApp to communicate with everyone, especially that everyone was in a different time zone. WhatsApp, it was so easy, because when I would go to bed, let's say I was in the judges WhatsApp group, which I was, because I was judging one of the contests. When I would go to bed, and I would wake up in the morning, I would check the WhatsApp group to see if there's any updates on anything that I needed to know before the contest started. And even during the contest, if you want to communicate with the contest chair, it's so much easier to use that rather than using the chat session, let's say within Zoom. And also the chat session in Zoom is limited, that you can only communicate one-on-one, versus if you have some other instant messaging system where you are able to create chats or groups, then you're able to get the message quicker to more people at the same time. So they actually recommend that you do that. And TI, basically says that, ensure that all contestants have the chief judge's information. That is key. Not just the contestants, but also the contest officials. It's good that they have the information, and even the timers. You want to make sure that they have the judge's information, so that when the judges need to submit the ballot counters, which they send to the ballot. When judges need to submit the ballots, they're going to be sending it to the ballot counter. So the judges make sure that they have the ballot counters information. And also make sure that the tie-breaking judge, that they only communicate with the chief judge. And you want to make sure that that's the only communication that they have, because the chief judge should be the only one that knows about the tie-breaking judge. The process for protest, you may want to prepare this ahead of time, just in case. I've actually never been in a contest where a protest has been lodged. But then again, I've only been in Toastmasters for 5 years. I'm sure there have been protests in the past. I'm curious if there's anybody here that actually has been to a contest where one of the judges or a contestant has actually launched a protest. I'm curious. Anybody here has seen that process? I've never seen it.
I've actually been in a contest once where there was a sort of a preemptive protest lodged by the chief judge to get a confirmation in advance, because one of the contestants had come to the chief judge and says, "I'm planning to do this. Is that okay?" And so the chief judge used the protest process as a way to poll the rest of the judges to see if we thought that what the contestant was doing was within the rules, or if they would be safer to drop that part of their presentation.
I see. Okay, cool. In any case, it's good to prepare ahead of hand. And I will even go as far as saying that to create a breakout room specifically for protest and define who are all the people that need to be there ahead of time, and then let them know that if we have a protest, by the way, we're going to be moving you to this room, and that's where we're going to have the discussions. Ideally, the only people that should be in the room are the judges, the chief judge, and then potentially also the contestant after the judges and the chief judge have spoken, because when there is a protest about a particular contestant, TI says that you have to give that contestant a chance to explain themselves. Let's say, for example, that you think if it is eligibility, I mean, that is black and white. They're either eligible or they're not. But if it is because of originality, then no, maybe they can explain themselves a little better. But regardless, you have to give them a chance to explain themselves, and then you can make the decision, after that. As far as display names is concerned, all participants should change their display name. TI recommends that the chief judge, contest chair, timers, and contestants should name themselves as follows: role plus their name, or you can use dash or plus sign, whatever it is, but essentially it has, they recommend that you do that, the role and then their name. And I've actually seen that in a lot of the contests, so that you know who's the contestant, who's the chief judge, who's the contest chair, who's the timer. It just makes it a lot easier for people to see who those contest officials are. Okay, let's move on. These are things that the contest chair and the chief judge essentially have to keep in mind. Toastmasters recommend that you have backup contest officials, which apply really to judges and ballot counters. And they say that you want to do this in case any of them have a connection partway through the contest. I have mixed feelings about this recommendation. And this is not TI. This is what I'm going to say that you should do, or that I recommend, instead of having, because it's going to be hard, honestly, to have backup contest officials. It's hard enough recruiting people to be in your contest to even then have contest in the backup for them. So what I say is this: have a lot of them. have a lot of them. So for example, for an area contest, they require you to have 5 judges, maybe have 7 or 8 if you can, just so that in case one of them has a problem partway through one of the contestants speaking and is not able to get back online, then you can essentially take that judge out of the equation, and then you can use the other 7. That's what I would recommend, but it's up to you. If you can't recruit that many people to have backups for everyone, hey, go at it. But I think you're going to have a hard time getting backups for everyone. But nonetheless, that is something that TI recommends that you do. We already talked about the process for protest. It's same thing as I said earlier. Just this is something you want to have in place beforehand. So that's one is a repeat. The judging process. Okay, you want to communicate to everyone that the judging process is essentially the same. Just because we're doing online, it doesn't mean that we have other things that we're going to add to the judge's ballot. No, the judging process remains the same. Now, TI actually says that judges should adhere to the items outlined in the judge's guideline and ballot, just as they would in an in-person contest. Now, at the club level, you may be a little more flexible to include other things. For example, if the person goes off camera completely, what does that mean? Should you count that or should you not count that? So just have a conversation with your chief judge and agree on how it is that you want to do the judging, and then communicate that to the contestants so they are aware. But in essence, we should basically follow the same guidelines that we have been following all along. It's basically what TI says. And just know that technology issues can happen. It's just the nature of things. Should technology issues occur, you want to basically, if something happens that will hinder the contest, then the chief judge can make the decision to stop the contest and resume when the issues are resolved. That is something that they do have the right to do. So just be aware that problems can happen. And then also, don't take audio and video quality into account. TI said that you should not take that into account when you are going to be doing the judging. If their quality looks a little pretty, or if the sound is not coming up as crispy as you would like, that should not be one of your criteria to essentially select the when you do the judging. So they basically said to put that out of your mind. This is something that I actually hadn't thought about until I started doing the research. Contestants with disability. It can happen. I know actually in District 117 we have one contestant that has disability. And basically what TI says regarding that is to ensure that you are aware of any conditions that need to be made for that contestant with a disability. You want to make sure that they practice ahead of time, with whatever compromise or alternate signal methods you've developed for them. Whatever it is, basically you want to make sure that they practice ahead of time. But that is something that you have to just be aware of. And then as far as the speaking position is concerned, you want to set the standard for the speaking position for all contestants and communicate this to the judges and the sergeant at arms. You may decide for your contest that you want all of the contestants to be standing up when they give their speech. That's actually what I have seen. I'm trying to think right now. I don't think for a contest that I have seen any contestants actually do a speech while sitting down. But is that something that you're going to penalize if they do that? I mean, you just have to decide. And if you want all the contestants to be standing up, then the chief judge and the contest chair basically have to get together and decide that, and then communicate that to the contestants. All of these things is really all about communication. and whatever it is that you plan to do, make sure that you let everyone know, because you want to make sure this is a fair contest and that everyone knows the rules. And then speech titles. You want to confirm the speech titles with the contestants before the contest. In the contest that we had in the spring for the district, I actually had a contestant that changed their speech titles a couple of times. So actually, just the day before, I actually wasn't sure because I got conflicting messages, which is the title that they were going to use. So I had to get on the phone and verify. I was like, okay, is it this one? I got this one from this person, but then I got the other one from the contest master. I was the Toastmaster for the contest. So I got one from the contest master, and then I got another one from the contestants, and I wasn't sure which was the right one. So it's important that you get that right, because the last thing you want to do is in the contest announce the contestant, and then it turns out that within his speech, he says a different title. So you want to make sure that you get that right. It can happen. People do change the title. As a matter of fact, it is not required that you maintain the same speech throughout the different levels of the district. You are actually welcome to give a speech at the club and then give a different speech at the area. Now, most contestants don't do that because since their speech already won at the club and they've been working on it, a lot of times they actually use the same one. But there's actually no rule that says you have to use the same one. You can use whatever you want. As long as you keep winning levels, it doesn't matter. The only requirement is when you get to the finals, it has to be a new speech. That's basically what it is. But district or below, no, that doesn't really matter. And the practice pronunciation, I mean, that goes without saying. You want to make sure that you know how to pronounce contestant's name, which you will get to do at the contestant's briefing. Let's see. Yeah, that's all I needed to say about this. Any questions? Okay, let's move on. Okay, as far as the contestants, you want to make sure that they attend the contestant's briefing. Contestants should attend the contestant briefing. They want to test their technology, including the audio and the camera setup. That is important that they do that at the briefing. And then once the technology has been tested, you want to leave it alone. You got to tell the contestants, once you have it tested, do not touch anything, leave it how it is. We know it works. And if you want to make any changes, then you tell them you can do it afterwards. But tell them, please don't try to make any changes that is different from what you've already set up during the briefing, before when you do their speech. If you want to do any changes, do it after. And then this is something that you have to agree on how you are going to verify that they are ready whenever it is that, we have the minute of silence, and then you say, and with the next contestant, please start getting ready. But when that minute of silence is done, in the briefing, you have to agree how it is that they're going to say or how they're going to communicate to you that you're ready. I've seen it done that after the minute of silence is done, you basically say, contestant so-and-so, are you ready? And then you will wait to hear, I am ready from them or something like that. So because of this online and you're not seeing the person, you have to have some kind of agreement on how it is that they're going to indicate to you that they're ready. And as far as camera is concerned, I mean, I've already said this, you want to make sure that you do test the equipment, technology can break really fast. So the more you test, the better it is, and the more familiar that you know that you're going to be with things, how they're working. It is recommended that the camera should always be at the eye level of the speaker, if possible. TI actually says that you need to be able to see the contestant's expression. So if the camera is not at the eye level, well, that's going to be a problem because you're not going to be able to see their face expression. And you also want to make sure that you have a fixed camera. And I said this earlier, you don't want a camera where somebody is like holding it for you. No, you want to get some kind of stand where it's fixed and it's not going to be moving. And having a fixed camera will also allow you to mark the speaking area ahead of time so that without having to even look at your picture in the computer whether you're coming off frame or not. So that is key, that you have the camera fixed and that it is at the eye level. And then you want to make sure that you make eye contact with the camera. I spoke about this before the meeting started, how I'm still struggling just speaking to a camera because I don't feel that I'm speaking to people when I'm just looking at a piece of equipment, but it is what it is, and you have to look at the camera when you are speaking. Actually, I will go as far as saying that only the contestant and the timer, regarding the camera, should have their video on. Everyone else, audience and everyone else should have the video off. So only the contestant and the timer, even the contest chair, with the camera, they should have their video off, because you don't want to distract the speaker. And I'm a little conflicted about this, actually, because when you give your speech, I get a lot of energy from the audience when I'm giving a speech. But now with the online contest, I found that is something that I really, really miss, is that audience feedback. It feels a little, I don't want to say dead, but discouraging when you're giving a speech and then you're not getting any feedback from the audience. So that's something that I dearly miss. And I can't wait until we go back on meeting online with our meetings, because I dearly, dearly miss that feedback from the audience, just their laughters and everything else when they have responses to what you say. But because of the online, and you don't want any distractions, and also if you have everyone's camera turned on, that'll actually require more bandwidth for each person, for their computer to be able to display the video. Therefore, that can affect their audio quality. So the more videos that you're showing on your computer, the more bandwidth that is going to be required. And so your audio quality could suffer. So that's the other reason why TI says that you should maintain all of the cameras off, and especially in a contest that there's going to be a lot of people there. So the more people that are there and the more people that have their video on, then the more bandwidth that is going to be required for your computer to be able to show all those videos. But if you turn it off, then the audio quality could potentially be better, because now there's more bandwidth. So that's actually one of the main reasons why TI says that only the contestant and the timer should be the only ones with the camera turned on. Okay, let's see here. Okay, when the contestant is speaking, what I want to say about this here. Yeah, so that's basically what it is to have the camera off, everyone else. Okay, the lighting in the camera. If you're using some kind of lighting to make your room brighter, TI actually says that you want to put it behind the camera. Okay, you don't want to put it behind you, which will then interrupt the camera, because then we won't see you as good. So they actually says to put it behind the camera. And they're saying if you rely on natural light, like from the sun, or you have your blinds open and you're relying on that, practice at the same time of day as when the contest will be held. I mean, that's kind of common sense. But that is not very reliable, because what if you have a cloudy day when the contest happens? Then what? So I will not rely on natural light. I will get some lighting. Even if you have like a desk lamp, you get two of them, you put it right on each side of the computer. That's better, because it's more predictable than the natural light. Okay, as far as gestures are concerned, here's what TI says. They say that contestants should test their gestures and movement during the briefing to ensure they will remain in frame. And again, that goes, it's kind of common sense. The sound, okay, have contestants set up their technology in a space that reduces echo and background noise as much as possible. Again, that's common sense. And then TI actually recommends that contestants avoid using mobile devices. TI says that that they don't want contestants to use mobile devices, because if the contestant has, if they don't have any other choice, of course they have to use that. But the mobile device is not as convenient, because first of all, they're going to have a small frame, and it's going to make it hard for them to see the timer in a mobile device. I mean, if you have to use it, go ahead, but they say, unless you have nothing else, then don't use a mobile device. Only because of that, then you won't be able to see the timer that well in that little screen. Any questions on any of these items or anything else that you want to add? Everyone doing okay?
Hey, Bernie, there's been a discussion going on in the chat about, can you do the briefing before you know, when can you do the briefing? And I had been told at one point that it needed to be the same day as the contest, but I went and checked the rules and it says nothing about the same day. So I don't know if that's a recent change. It does help to at least have a practice session a day or two before to let everybody try out their equipment when they still have time to remedy it if it's not going to work.
That's it. Yeah, you can actually get together as many times as you want beforehand, but there has to be a briefing the day of the contest. But like you said, you can get together to test the equipment, you know, a week before, a few days before the contest, and that's totally fine. But you have to, just because you did that, it's not a replacement or an equivalent of the briefing that you have to do during the day. But if you want to do additional meetings to test the equipment, it's totally fine. Yeah. Totally fine. How are we doing on time? Okay, we're good. My plan is to actually be done with all of my slides in about an hour, and then I have another activity that I want to do at the end, which I think will be kind of fun. Okay, let's talk about judges and ballot counters. Now, there are multiple ways that the judges can get the ballots to the counters. And I have three things here as far as how they sign their ballots. You know, once they sign their ballots, you know, they can take a picture with their phone and then email that to the ballot counters. And, or they could use some kind of stylus if they're using like an iPad or something like that, and just sign it right there and then email that to the counters. Or if they're using the PDF reader, some kind of PDF reader, because the ballot contest is actually a fillable PDF form. That's actually how I've done it. And then inside, right in the PDF, and this is free, by the way, you don't even have to have the paid version of the Adobe Reader to be able to do this. The free version will also allow you to do this. And you could create a signature. You can create a signature and then add that to the ballot counter, and then you can send it off. You can send it off to the you can add that to the ballot and you can send it up to the ballot counters. Now, make sure that these ballots are signed. If a ballot counter receives a ballot from a judge that is not signed, guess what? We will not be able to use it. It's just not usable. So it has to be signed. And as far as sending the information to the ballot counters, there's two ways that you can do it. That form actually has two sections. The top part is information about the judge, and then the bottom part is information about the first, second, and third place winner, and then their signature. What I mean by this here, by taking a screenshot and crop, is basically just if you're doing it on the computer and you use the snipping tool, if you're using Windows, I don't know what the equivalent of a Mac is in that, but regardless, if you see a computer, you can take a screenshot of the whole sheet, and then you can crop just the bottom part and then send it off to the ballot counters. That's actually what I have done when I was doing the judging for the European contest, was that I just took a screenshot of the whole sheet, and then I went into my snipping tool, and then I cropped just the bottom part, then I hit copy, and then I went to my email, and then I just pasted that right into the email. I didn't even put it as an attachment because it takes so much time to then save the file on the computer, then you go to your email, and then you have to look for the file to attach it. It just takes too long. So what I did, I just pasted that screenshot right into the body of the email. Something that I did also when I was a judge is that right when the contest was getting started, I composed predefined emails that were there ready, waiting for me. So I will have in the two, I will have all of the ballot counters, and then in the CC, I will have the chief judge. Because remember, if you are a judge, when you send these things to the ballot counters, you also want to CC the chief judge, because the chief judge is going to verify the tabulation as well. And then when all the contestants were ready, it was fairly quick for me to just do my screenshot, grab the bottom part, and then just paste it into the email, and then boom, it was up to them. The other way that you can do it is forget about the top part. I mean, obviously you have had to fill out this form ahead of time, but leave the top part blank, and then just take a just fill in the bottom section, and then that's the one that you send to the ballot counters. So that's just a couple of ways you can do it. But the screenshot actually has worked pretty well for me in the past. So that's what what I would recommend. And then the judges and the ballot counters, they should speak with the chief judge ahead of time, of course, to confirm the method that will be used for collecting and counting ballots to ensure accuracy. What I suggest is that you create a breakout room. If you're using Zoom, you create a breakout room that is specifically just for them to do that. TI actually recommends that you use, if you're using that external instant messaging system, that you create something there. But unless you can enable video on there, I feel that just sending messages back and forth between the ballot counters and the chief judge is not as efficient. I mean, you could potentially do it because the ballot counter one can say, okay, I got this many for so-and-so, and the other one, I got this many for so-and-so. But if there is a disagreement there, it's going to be hard to figure out, how to solve that via chat. So that's why I recommend that you have some kind of a breakout room specifically for them to work that out. And let's see what else. Okay, let's talk about timers now. Timers, obviously it's recommended that you have 2 timers. But the way that this should work is that timer 1 will essentially record the official time. That's all they're doing. They have their stopwatch and their timer sheet there, and they're recording the official time. And then timer 2 should be the one displaying the light. But of course, they're also going to be keeping time. And the timer 2 will also serve as a backup for the timer 1. Now, if there is an issue with the stopwatch or the signaling device, TI actually recommends that an extra 30 seconds be given to the speaker. That's just something they recommend if there is some kind of issue with the stopwatch or the signaling device. So they recommend that an extra 30 seconds, meaning that if we have an issue with the stopwatch, we're not going to penalize the speaker. We should give them the benefit of the doubt that they actually stay within the time, so we give them an extra 30 seconds. That's what that means there, the next to last bullet item. And then you want to ensure that for the second timer, that they're always visible. That's what I said earlier, that their video should be on. And also agree beforehand how it is they're going to display or make the contestant known how it is they're going to show about where they are in their speech. I've seen it where the timer themselves is out of the frame and only the background is seen. And the way to do this is very simple. If you cover your camera, all you're going to see is the background. And that's actually what I recommend, because I find it a little bit distracting if there's somebody there in front of it in the color. So I strongly recommend that you block the camera. You can even just put a finger there. That's what I'm doing right now. And some of the newer cameras, actually, they have a little lever where you can move to block him or not. So definitely make use of that if you are a timer. What else? Yeah, this is it. All I wanted to say about this. Any questions? Okay, very good. Okay, we're doing good on time. Okay, let's talk about the audience real quick. Keep mic and video off. Pretty straightforward there. And you want to make sure that at the start of the contest that you say this. Say it right at the beginning so everybody knows. And I said this earlier that the video can actually slow down the bandwidth. Let's see what else. Okay, you want to make sure that the moderator has the ability to mute the audience. I just gave Susan that ability that before we started today's session, I made it a co-host so that she's able to mute audience. So that's just one step that you want to make sure that you do if you are going to have, and we highly recommend that you have a meeting moderator. And then the chat, just discuss on how the chat should be used if you are going to have it on. That's basically what that means. Pretty straightforward. And like I said earlier, you don't want anybody in the audience or anybody to be commenting on the speakers for everyone else. So if you want to have the chat on, maybe that's something you want to make clear for people not to comment on the contestant speeches. I think most people know that already, but it doesn't hurt to remind people about that. This part is actually interesting about the online speech contest statement. I actually didn't know this before I started doing research to prepare this slide for you. And I don't think we actually did this in the spring, or maybe TI hadn't yet decided on this. I don't know when this thing was published, but when I was doing searches, I found that TI has this speech contest statement that we need to use every time that we're doing an online contest, especially if it is being recorded. I think if you're not recording your contest, you don't have to say this, but if you are recording your contest, it is a must that you either read this so that everybody hears it, or that you put it somewhere, you write it somewhere where people are going to see it, but that they're not going to miss it. And basically what it's saying is that Toastmasters has a right to use you, because if they're recorded, there's a possibility that you're going to be on the frame. It's basically saying that Toastmasters has the right to use your image to then to show it to other people. I'm not going to read this whole thing. You can read it at your leisure later when I send you the slides, but that's essentially what it's saying. So this part was actually new for me. I didn't know that they even had this, but it is something that I just want to be aware. And I think it's probably going to be only applicable for the district level, because that's where we are required to record the speakers. In anything below that, it is optional for the contest chair if they want to record the contest. And actually, most times I don't see them recording the contest unless they're one of the contestants that wants to be recorded. And then at that point, we just record that single contestant out. But most of the times, this is only applicable for the district level. But nonetheless, it's just something to be aware of and something good to know. I definitely didn't know it before I started doing the research for this. Is this new to a lot of you? Did you know that TI had this? Yeah. So it's interesting they know they had that. Okay, let's move on. As far as presenting awards, this will be the lever, of course, at the end of the contest. And you can have a meeting with the moderator where you agree on how it is that you want to share this. I've seen it where as the contestant is being announced for whatever place they got, then either the sergeant at arms or the meeting moderator will show a certificate with their name on there. Whatever method it is you're going to use, just make sure that you agree with that, with the meeting moderator, the contest master, and whoever else is involved in that, so you have a way of presenting the awards. That is actually what I recommend, is that as they are being called, that you show the certificate for the first place and whatnot on the screens with their name, so that everybody can see it. That's really what it is with the awards. And then obviously we all usually give trophies at contests that are area level and above, and those they have to be mailed. There's really no other way to do that. We just have to mail it to them, that's really the only way. And obviously with the certificates we can email it to them, but with the actual trophies, we don't have virtual trophies. The certificates are actually kind of the equivalent of the virtual trophies. Now, after the contest, that normally when we meet in person, we tell the ballot counters and the judges to destroy all of the materials that they used to do their judging. Because the last thing that you want is for somebody to get a hold of that, and you don't want to create any confrontation later on, so you want to make sure that all those things are destroyed. But in the case of the online contest, what we say is, especially for the judges, is to destroy and delete all of their, as I'm calling here, judging digital files, but that's basically is all of the materials that they use for the judging. That's why it's important, when I was talking about earlier about that judging ballot, to cut out only the bottom, because the top part actually has information on the points that you gave for each contest. And that information should only be for that one judge that used that sheet. So that's why it's important that you crop just the bottom and you send it to the ballot council, because nobody else should see how it is that you make the determination, you know, of the points. That's why I was talking about just, you know, either leaving that part blank, and you can do it by hand, and then leaving that blank on the computer, and then just send it. Then in that case, you can send the whole sheet. But after the fact, you know, if you did do it on the computer, your calculation, then you want to delete those things. And then as far as submitting the video to TI, this is mostly for the district contest where we have to submit the video to TI. If it is a district level international speech contest, because also it only applies to the international speech contest, then the video needs to be submitted to TI within 1 week. Okay, most of you don't need to know this unless, you know, you are involved in a district contest, but that is one of the requirements, that it has to be submitted. So if the contest finishes today, Saturday, you know, they have to have the video of the winning person by Friday midnight, basically. So you have 1 whole week to submit that. So you have to work pretty quickly in editing the video, because also they say that when you send in the video of the winning person, they only want to see the introduction for that speaker and their video, nothing else. That's all that should be sent to them. Okay, let's talk about the table topics and the evaluation contest. For both of these contests, you want to arrange a method for contestants to leave the main room. And most times this is a breakout room. I think this has worked pretty good in the contests that I have been in. And even when we did our district contest in the spring, that worked out pretty well, but we had a breakout room where we could keep the contestants until we were ready to bring it back into the main room. And then when the contestants come back, you know, they need to indicate that they're ready once they come into the main room. So that one there's pretty easy. For the evaluation contest, you want to make sure that, you know, whoever you have as the target speaker or the test speaker, that you display their name as such. Of course, you're not going to put the real name beforehand, so you want to have the display name to be TI. I should recommend to use exactly what I have here, test speaker, and obviously have the video off until they're announced. Nobody should know who the test speaker is until the point that they got to speak. You know, that's really how that works. And as far as evaluation, table topics are concerned, I'm conflicted about this, but let me just tell you what TI recommend. They actually recommend that to privately type the topic in the chat, you know, privately to that contestant, because this is what they say, because audio lag could cause the topic to be missed by the contestant. So it is recommended that it is typed privately in chat directly to the contestants, as well as read out loud. Okay, this is what TI says. I have not seen this done in contests that I have been to. All of them have just been on the audio and not typed. And the reason why I don't want this to be typed is because you may send it to the wrong, what if you by mistake send it to the wrong contestant in private, and then boom, they already know what the topic is when it hasn't been their turn. That's why I actually don't agree with this about typing it, but I'm just sharing with you what TI recommends. That is just what they say, you know, that aside from just saying it verbally, that you also type it, but it's up to you if you want to take that advice or not. Okay. This is actually the last slide on the online speech best practices. And I actually accomplished, because I wanted to do that in 1 hour and I have 1 minute left. So we're doing okay. Any questions on here or anything else that we said previously? I'm going to go into video recording guidelines real quick. I have one slide on video recording guidelines. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about video recording. These are the official video recording guidelines from TI. And by the way, this is not new. This has been a run actually for a couple of years already, because a lot of you may know that in 2018, TI made a ruling that people that won at the district were not going to go in person to the conference to do the quarterfinals, but instead it was going to be a video that was going to be sent. And the first time that was done was actually in 2019. So twice we have done it where we have to send a video to the quarterfinals. And because of that, then they created this video recording rules, which is still applicable to today's environment with the online. And let me just, a lot of these things are self-explanatory, so I don't really have to add a lot of it, but let me just read it out loud so that we all know it. Now, the first one is that the audio must be clear and without echo, static or otherwise excessive noise. I kind of already mentioned that earlier. The camera, they basically say that must record in high definition, which I believe that's 720p for all the tech folks over here. It's 720p or high. However, they say that if you use a lower resolution camera, you should not take that as a negative judging criteria. But you should not take that as a judging criteria when they're judging it, because they say themselves that the video and the audio should not be taken into account. But nonetheless, they recommend that you, actually, they say the word must. This is actually, this is their wording. They say the word must record in high definition. They say that you should only have a single camera, so they don't want multiple cameras where at one point you're seeing this view and then at another point it changes the view. No. They say, once you start speaking, whatever angle, whatever view you started with, that's how you have to end it. And while you are recording, they said you should not use the zooming, which I put there next to the last year. Zooming is just not allowed during the meeting. So if you want to basically be close up when you do your speech, then zoom in and stay there. You cannot then, after you start speaking, zoom out and then have a different view. They don't allow that. The camera must be placed on the tripod. I said this earlier that they don't want any movement. The cameras must have an unobstructed, in-focus view of the contestants. That's straightforward. The entire speaking area must be visible throughout the recording. Whatever we can see through your camera, that's essentially the speaking area. The zooming, I already talked about that, and then that the speaking area must be fully lit. They say that the judges have to be able to see the contestants' face expression. So whatever lighting you're going to use, make sure that we can see your face. It's basically what that is. So pretty straightforward. This has been around for a couple of years and it's still applicable into today's environment. But again, these rules really only apply at the district level, because none of the videos that are being recorded, anything below the district, are going to go outside of the district. So they are, as far as recording is concerned, you can use whatever you want, but for judging, for the judges, it's important that you follow this, even if you're not going to be doing the recording, like the camera fixed. Some of the things apply regardless or not whether you're doing the recording, just for us or for the judges to be able to see you. Any questions on these guidelines? Okay, very good, very good. Here I'm listing some recordings. Everything I told you today, actually, as far as the best practices and the recording guidelines, are actually in these documents. This best practices is a PDF. I don't know how many pages it is, but it's not too long of a document, but you can find all the details there in better wording of how I told it to you. But you can actually go and read yourself all of these guidelines that I share with you today. That comes straight from TI, and you can go and get the document there. And then I have some additional resources there for some tips for doing online meetings. You can go there and read that. There's some good tips in there, which I didn't cover here, because this is more specific for online meetings, not so much for contests. And then from a contestant point of view, Aaron Beverly actually created a couple of videos, which are actually quite nice, where he shares tips from the contestant's point of view as to how you can make your presentation better. So this is definitely worth a shot. And by the way, we are planning on creating a similar session like this today for the contestants. So everything that we feel is going to enhance their speech, or things that they need to be aware of when they're giving a speech for an online contest. So we're working on that. Stay tuned for the date. It's going to be in early October when we're going to do that. And we're also going to have previous winners share some tips on that that could be useful for future contestants. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, you can go in here. If you are planning on competing in one of the upcoming contests, even at the club level, some of the tips will actually be quite useful. Okay, very good. And then I'm going to conclude the video here for the recording purposes by basically saying that everyone can have a great contest if they do the preparation and the required training, so that they can understand what needs to be done, and that the contest is properly staffed, and that you follow the proper guidelines, whether in person or online. And then, except for these online guidelines, everything else is in the rule book. Okay, please don't disregard the rule book. There is so much information there. Pretty much everything you need to know for running a contest is in the rule book, except for these online guidelines, which is not there in the rule book. So definitely make use of that. And don't wait until the day of the contest to look at the rule book. I said that in my other presentation. You want to read it ahead of time, and you want to read it multiple times. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. Give me 1 second. Okay, stop recording.